Hello, all my wonderful readers. Today, we shall be reading The Cannibals of Candyland by Carlton Mellick III, and starting on Chapter 6. So the recap is, our main character, Franklin, is trying to hunt down a candy person that killed his brother and sister when he was only 10 years old. And huh? Oh, I know. He has a cat named Crab Cake that he keeps in his pocket that he uses to ease his anxiety. He lives in a tiny studio apartment, and he gets picked on by small little kids in the neighborhood. Oh god. There we go. The little kids' names are Jimmy and Troy. Huh? Oh, and he loves to wear his red suit. Blind, thank you for the host. How are you, Blind? I'm excited to start this reading. Oh my god, yes!
I'm
right.
blind, not deaf.
Here we go. Franklin spends the rest of the day hating himself for not having the courage to go down to the candy person in the park. At one of the breweries downtown, he drinks a few Belgian-style ales. He only goes to the brewery, thank you. He only goes to the brewery once a month because he can't afford it, because he doesn't get very buzzed anymore due to his artificial brain. Drinking a triple, he pets Crab Cake in his red suit pocket and wonders how many children will die because he let that thing live. He doesn't know why he hesitated. It was perfect timing, too. He had a gun with him, and the neighborhood was mostly empty due to it being in the middle of the workday. He only runs into candy people a couple of times a year, at most. It might be 3 years before he sees one again. Then again, this was the second one he had run into in just a month. He wonders if they are hunting for more frequently. Perhaps they're getting hungry and hungrier. Oh, hold on. Or perhaps they are growing in number. After he finishes his beer, he asks the bartender with the Santa Claus tattoo for another Abbey style on the cask. Sorry, buddy. The bartender says, shaking his head, all out. Of the Abbey? Franklin says, no, you're not. The keg is cashed, says the bartender. You still have approximately 122 ounces left in that cask. The bartender shakes the cask. Beer splashes inside. Nice overlay. Thanks, Josh. I appreciate it. But he still shakes his head Nope. Empty. Look, Franklin says, taking off his apple red hat and placing it onto the counter. I can tell how many ounces are left in it based on the sound it makes when it is pumped. I know that you know there is more beer in the cask, and you just don't want to give me any more for some reason or another. If I had to guess, I would say that this is the last of the batch. It is really good beer. You probably want to take the rest of it home for yourself. It's not that, the bartender says. You've just had too many beers already. But I've had only 3 beers, Franklin says. But each of those were over 8% alcohol. But 3 glasses of wine isn't too much in a restaurant, and red wine is usually 13 or 14%. Hey, Delta. The bartender squints his eyes and frowns at him. Look, Franklin says, I just want 1 more beer. That leaves you 188 ounces left to take home. That is still plenty of beer. Yeah, but, the bartender begins, you might have noticed I said 108 ounces rather than 106. If you poured me a normal 16-ounce pint, there would only be 106 ounces left. But you haven't been filling up my beers all the way to the top of my glasses. You have been pouring, which has been shorting people out of 2 ounces of beer per glass. Thank you, Blind. I am okay with this. I don't like to complain, but if you will not give me another pint from the cask, I would at least like 6 ounces of it to make up for the beer I've already paid for. The bartender shakes his head at Franklin as if he were the biggest asshole customer he's had all week. Fine, the bartender says, and pumps him a beer from the cask. When he gets the beer, he discovers it's 6 ounces short of a pint. The bartender still charges him for a full pint and quickly walks away to serve another customer before Franklin has the chance to complain about it. Thank you, Delta. On the way home, Franklin runs into Troy in the street again. This time, the kid is all alone. Hey, fag boy, Troy says to Franklin. Where the hell were you? I've been waiting for you all day. Franklin ignores him and keeps walking. I need some money, Troy says. Right now. I'm sorry, I'm broke, Franklin says. Right now! I told you, I don't have any money. You better have some money, or else you know what's gonna happen. Franklin wonders if the kid knows he's lying. Look, kid. Oh, wow. Wrong voice. Look, kid, he says. I spent it all at the bar. You have to have some money. Just give me whatever you got. Franklin stops and turns to the kid. What do you need it for anyways? It's Jimmy's birthday tomorrow. I want to get him that new transformer he's been asking for. Our parents aren't going to give him shit. He's your little brother? Franklin asks. Yeah, Troy says. I look out for him. Franklin stares at him for a moment. Then he nods his head. Okay, Franklin says. I'll give you what I got, but it's not much. Give me all of it, the kid says. Franklin gives him $7 and some change. Troy takes the money and runs off. Delta, thank you for the host. I appreciate it. Then he turns around and says, Thanks, bad boy. And when the kid turns around, Franklin hears him say, What a stupid bitch. Franklin stands in the street for a few minutes, wondering if he had just been duped. Even with his fancy high-tech brain, Franklin can't outsmart an 11-year-old. At home, Sarah and Susan are waiting for him. There's another guy with them sitting on the couch. He might be the guy from the night before, or maybe he's somebody else. The apartment is destroyed. It smells like smoke and urine. Franklin guesses they're on another meth binge. They always destroy the apartment when they go for a meth binge. What happened? Franklin asks. He notices that his handmade cubicle has been raised to the floor. Part of it is blackened as if they lit it on fire and then pissed the fire out, which would account for the smell of the room. We made a decision, Susan says. We want you to move out. Yeah, Sarah says. What did you do to my office? Franklin says as he digs through the pea-soaked boards in the corner of the room. We burned it! We burned all your stuff, Sarah says, giggling. You burned my clothes? My laptop? Oh, we don't want you here anymore, Susan says. You're a loser. I'm a loser? Franklin says. Neither of you had worked a day in your lives. Just get out, Susan says. This is my apartment, Franklin says. My name is on the lease. We don't care, Susan says. David just got kicked out of his place, so he is moving in. The three of us decided that you should go. Who the hell is going to pay your rent then? Franklin says. If you think I'm going to, then you're even stupider than I realized. David will, Sarah says. He has loads of money. Franklin looks at the guy on the couch. He's much younger than any of them, with long, greasy black hair, a scraggly beard, and several homemade tattoos. He looks like a cross between a hippie and a Mexican gang member. What does he do? Franklin says. Sell drugs? He makes more than you, Sarah says. Then why doesn't he get you guys a nicer apartment? I moved here for a reason. I'm staying. If you want to move in with your boyfriend, find another love nest. If you don't leave now, we'll have David throw you out, Susan says. If you don't leave now, I'll call the cops on your drug dealer boyfriend, Franklin says. What did you just say? A deep voice from the couch. David stands up and faces Franklin. Did you say you were going to call the cops on me?
Is it going to be a redhead?
I don't know. He picks up Franklin's red cane from the floor. It says deep voice, so I'm going to do a deep voice.
Dramatic.
He picks up Franklin's red cane from the floor. It is only an item of Franklin's that has survived his wife's meth-crazed wave of destruction. Franklin hopes that the guy doesn't realize there is a sword inside. Franklin pets the pistol in his pocket. I'm not leaving. Yes, you are, David says. Sarah cheers with glee as David swings the red cane like a baseball bat at Franklin's head. But with his quick eye-hand coordination, Franklin is able to duck out of the way and land a punch in the center of David's face. Although the punch hurt Franklin's hand far more than it hurt David, it pisses the hell out of his young drug dealer. You son of a bitch! Sarah screams at Franklin. What the hell did you do that for? Susan says. Franklin doesn't understand why they're angry with him for defending himself. David swings the cane another time and Franklin dodges it again. Franklin doesn't try to throw another punch because his hand is suffering enough from the last one. Then his two wives join the fight. They throw their fists at his red suit and kicks at his shins. Franklin puts one hand in his pocket to protect Crabcake, and with his free hand he reaches for the gun in his other pocket. But before he can pull out the gun, Susan punches him in the side of the head, right on his temple. His right ear pops off. He doesn't realize she has accidentally hit the button beneath his ear until he feels his skull opening. As Franklin takes his hand out of his pocket to retrieve his artificial ear, he sees David's shadow behind him swinging the cane with all his strength. The cane slams into his exposed brain, and Franklin blacks out.
Dun dun dun!
Chapter 7. Oh, Chapter 7. Franklin awakes in an alley of a couple blocks away from his apartment. His mind is foggy. He feels the side of his head and discovers that his skull is still open. He gently touches his brain with the tips of his fingers. There's cigarette butts and bits of dirt stuck in his neural tissue. There is also a fluid coating in it that shouldn't be there. What's up, Josh? It's human urine. What the? Franklin yells. Did they urinate on my brain? He cringes as he tries to wipe the dirt and urine from the surface of his brain tissue. But every time he wipes it, it causes his mind to go fuzzy and warped. He cleans it the best he can and then pushes the button to close his skull. But his skull does not close. Feeling the lids of his skull, he realizes that they've been jammed. 2 pieces of the metal frames are bent. One of the pieces is dangling from its hinges. He'll need to get another operation to fix it. In the meantime, his brain will have to remain exposed. He still has his gun, which is jabbing into the side of his stomach. His cane is on the ground next to him. His entire body is filled with sore spots, so his wives must have beat him with the cane while he lay unconscious in the alley. He no longer has his hat or his right ear. His umbrella is missing, and his cat, Crab Cake, is not in his pocket. He scans the alley for his kitten, but she is nowhere to be seen. This worries Franklin. Crab Cake stays with him 24 hours a day. She never leaves his side, even for a minute. Even if he had been laying in the alley for days, she would not have voluntarily left his side. They took her, Franklin says. He gets to his feet. He knows the only way Crab Cake wouldn't be with him is if his wives kept the cat or did something to it. Ah! My screen! It is fucking up. There it is. I should do it like this, right? How's that?
Yes, you're reading over the book.
Are you reading over the book? The book is coming out of the pages. Alright, we're back to the book.
Back to crab cake.
Back to Crab Cake.
Missing.
He gets to his feet. Franklin leaves the alleyway, holding the gun in his pocket, ready to draw the sword out of his cane. He doesn't care that his wives kicked him out of his apartment. He doesn't care that they have burned his stuff. He doesn't care that they have beaten and broke his skull lids. He doesn't even care that they peed on his brain. What if they did anything to his cat? He will kill him with all. He will kill them all without hesitation. He thinks that Jake, the guy who sold him the gun, might have been right. Maybe he was going to kill his wife with the gun. It wasn't his original plan, but at this moment, he is ready to kill someone. As Franklin gets to the front of his apartment building, he screams, or he hears a scream, a child scream. He stops and looks around. The street is empty. Another scream. This one is... Desktop, thank you for the phone. Welcome to the Wolf Pack.
Dramatic reading.
And the dramatic reading. This is one loud cry for help. Franklin steps away from the entrance of his apartment and follows the screams. In a parking garage around the corner, he sees a little boy being eaten alive by a man made out of candy. The man has a bulging, swirly lollipop eyes and long, black licorice hair that resembles dreadlocks. He wears a brown chocolate suit with jelly beans for buttons. The creature has ripped open the kid's chest and is gnawing on his ribcage. The boy cries for help as the man eats him alive. He would have seen Franklin over his creature's shoulder if his eyes hadn't been slurped out of his head. Still dazed from the damage to his artificial brain, Franklin isn't thinking straight enough to be afraid. He pulls the gun from his pocket and points it at the candy man, remembering that the gun dealer said about the candy skin. Franklin stumbles towards the candy man, aims for the head, and shoots him 3 times. Even though he's only 12 feet away, the bullets don't hit the creature. One of them goes over its head. One of them grazes its soft caramel shoulder. but the third hits it in its side, cracking open its brown, root beer-flavored candy coating. The creature shrieks and leaps away from the boy. It sees Franklin. Its lollipop eyeballs swirl at him. Before Franklin can fire again, the creature turns and runs away. It moves as fast as a cat, leaping over the railings and parking garage down the street. Franklin decides it's better to help the boy than chase after the creature. The kid is in pieces. He is crying, coughing up blood. His ribs are exposed. Franklin can see his heart beating rapidly through his ribs.
Don't worry,
Franklin says. He kneels down and holds the kid's hand.
I'll help you up.
The boy stops crying and stares at Franklin with empty eye sockets.
What time is it?
The boy asks. Franklin isn't sure why the boy wants to know what time, but he looks at his watch and tells him anyways.
It's a little past midnight.
The kid smiles.
That means it's my birthday now,
he says. Franklin then recognizes the kid. It is Jimmy, the little kid who wanted the pet crab cake the previous day. The nice kid. That's why I went to the root beer man. That's why I went to the root beer man, he says. I thought he was going to give me a present for my birthday. The kid no longer seems to be in any pain. Franklin hopes he's just in shock.
Troy promised me that somebody would get me a present this year, he says. He wouldn't tell me who. I was hoping it would be a wizard or a lion's hammer, or someone magical like that. That's why I thought the root beer man might be the one. I didn't know he was going to be mean.
Franklin realizes that Jimmy isn't in shock. The boy isn't feeling any pain anymore because he is about to die.
Jimmy,
Franklin says.
the person who bought you a present was your brother, Troy.
He told me today he was going to buy you a transformer, the one that you wanted. The red holes in his head light up with excitement as if they still had eyes in them.
Really?
Jimmy cries.
Yes, says Franklin. But don't tell him I told. He'll get mad at me for ruining the surprise.
I can't wait,
Jimmy says. He sighs a deep, happy sigh, but never draws another breath. Franklin looks away from the boy's body and sees a trail of blood heading in the direction the Candyman fled. As Franklin leaves the parking garage, his hands covered in Jimmy's blood, he runs to Troy. The boy sees the blood on Franklin's head. Then he sees his little brother's ragged corpse in the deserted parking lot behind him. He puts two together and screams. Franklin tries to calm him down, but the boy only screams louder. He screams for his mom and his dad, as if they were just around the corner. Franklin tries to put his hand over the boy's mouth, but the boy runs away, screaming for the police. Chapter 8! Huh? I'm good. Franklin runs down the street, following the trail of blood the wounded Candyman left behind. He has to kill or capture this creature, or else he'll never be able to prove his innocence to the people or the police. The trail leads him to a manhole near the old park. The park had been shut down a few years ago because the children had gone missing at that park. Than any other park in the country, the manhole cover has not been closed properly, making it easier for Franklin to catch up with the creature. Franklin assumes the Candyman had been too injured to close it, but knows that it might be also a trap. The Candyman might be down there, waiting for him in the dark. Although he doesn't have a flashlight, Franklin decides to risk it and go down the ladder. He doesn't have much of a choice. The sewer is surprisingly large and dry. With the little light he has shining through the gutters, he is able to navigate through the tunnel. Following the trail of blood, he becomes difficult in the dim lighting.
And then it becomes even more difficult once the sewer branches off into a maze of tunnels. He has to use all of his fancy brain to focus on the blood trail. After a few blocks, he comes to another manhole. The lid is still open, just as the last one. Franklin climbs down to discover another maze of tunnels identical to the tunnels above. It is some kind of subsewer. Franklin isn't quite sure why there is another sewer below the regular sewer. He doesn't know very much about sewers. This sewer is much colder and darker than the previous one. He uses the cane to guide him forward in the dark. He cannot see any blood in this tunnel, so he moves towards the dim light in the distance. He figures that would be the most logical place the creature would be headed. The light becomes brighter once he turns around the corner, then even brighter once he turns around another corner. Eventually, he discovers that the light is coming from another manhole. He climbs down the ladder. This one goes deeper down than the previous two. The maze of the tunnels here are surprisingly clean and very bright. They are lit up with some kind of iridescent lighting in the corners of the walls. Franklin can see the trail of blood perfectly now. He walks with his gun pointing forward. The tunnel branches every 30 feet. The blood trail twists through the tunnels in a disorderly fashion. It ends in the middle of the white wall. A bloody handprint centers the wall. Franklin puts his left hand over the handprint and pushes. The wall opens up like a revolving door. Beyond the door is a tiny room with a red spiral staircase heading downwards. Once he sets his foot into the first step of the staircase, he recognizes that it's made of hard candy. He takes the ladder down, careful not to slip on any of the blood. Franklin calculates that the stairs go down for 88 feet. At the bottom, Franklin finds himself surrounded by rock walls. The blood leads into the mouth of a brightly lit cave. Franklin moves faster. He needs to catch up to the wounded Candyman before he reaches any of his friends. The farther Franklin goes, the wider the cave gets and deeper into the earth it descends. He keeps his eyes on the blood and his gun pointed forward. Soon the cave opens up into another world. Franklin has to stand still to take it all in. As far as his eyes can see, there is a landscape of bright colors and swirling patterns. A landscape made out of candy. There are lollipop trees, licorice grass, cotton candy clouds, and grape-flavored purple sky. Hills of chocolate, rivers of jelly, fields of candy canes, and in the far distance there are enormous blue, green, and pink gumballs the size of mountains. Franklin picks up his pace. He climbs over hills of chocolate, careful not to slip in the peanut butter mud, and enters a meadow by a pond filled with watermelon soda. On the other side of the pond, Franklin sees a wounded Candyman crawling through the marshmallow flowers. He has lost too much blood and can no longer move very quickly. The Candyman looks back at Franklin with the cold lollipop eyes, breathing hoarsely and drooling blood. Not wasting any time, Franklin crosses the meadow until he is standing above the creature, pointing his gun down on it. The creature stares at Franklin with its mouth wide open. His rough breath sounds like growls. "You're an ugly thing," Franklin tells the Candyman. "It's time you were put out of your misery." He aims for the creature's heart. "No, you're an ugly thing," says the Candyman. His voice is like that of an old sailor's. Franklin steps back. He wasn't expecting that thing to understand English. He always assumes that these creatures were more like animals than people. "You can speak?" Franklin says. "Of course I can speak," says the Candyman. "I am a man, am I not?" "Not exactly," Franklin says. "We are not that much different from you," he says. The creature holds his wound as he speaks. His cracked candy coating crumbles between his fingers. What are you people? Franklin asks.
Who do you think we are?
Says the man.
We are candy people.
Where do you come from?
We come from the same place as you.
Says the candy man.
My people were once human like you, but we evolved differently. We evolved into candy people.
How can somebody evolve into candy? Franklin asks, lowering his gun. It doesn't make any sense. Oh my god, hold on.
Just as spiders evolved to produce webs to catch flies. Just as cheetahs evolved to run faster to catch antelope. Just as lanternfish evolved to produce lights that attract smaller fish to their mouths. We evolved into candy people so that it would be easier for us to catch our prey. Children. Our ancestors were a community of cannibals who used to lure children with candy. After several generations, our young ones were born with candy growing from their hands. Eventually, they were born with candy skin. It was a way of evolution.
Franklin doesn't know if he can believe him. He wonders if it's just a normal man wearing a costume made of candy. He wonders if they are just a community of insane cannibals who created an underground environment to look as if it was made of candy. It would make much more sense to him than evolution. That kind of evolution takes a very long time, Franklin says. Millions of years. Thank you, Window, I appreciate it.
Not in our case, it seems.
The man says. Franklin lets out a puff of air. But how do you know English? Franklin says. How do you know about the lanternfish and cheetahs? The Candyman coughs a laugh.
As I said, our people were once humans. They spoke English. They had books. We learned from these books. We are an educated people.
You are monsters, Franklin says.
We are no more monsters than you are,
says the man. You eat children, Franklin says. The Candyman shrugs.
Well, yes,
he says.
They are delicious.
Franklin spits at him. You evil piece of... As Franklin raises his gun to the creature's head, the Candyman lunges at him. The gun goes off, but the bullet misses. The Candyman stabs him with the root beer-flavored fingernails. Although made of candy, the fingernails are as strong as glass and sharp as knives. Thank you, Bess. Franklin cries out. He points his gun at the Candyman's stomach and fires twice, throwing the creature back. The Candyman shrieks. He raises his claws and goes for Franklin's throat, but Franklin gets at him first. He fires 3 bullets into the creature's head at the point-blank range. A fleshy human brain explodes out of the candy skull in blubbery chunks. The creature falls back. The blue swirl in his lollipop eyes go white. Chapter 9. Franklin falls into the marshmallow flowers, holding his stomach. He looks around to see if any candy people are in the area. The gunshots would surely attract attention. He's out of bullets. The rest of the bullets are hidden in his apartment. He doesn't know what he's going to do if other candy people show up. His cane sword is his only defense. He decides to act quickly, even though his insides feel like they've been shredded into pulp. He drags the corpse of Candyman across the meadow. He is much heavier than a normal human. Franklin can tell that the candy coating adds another 53.7 pounds. He winces as he drags the body and cries out whenever he slips in a puddle of caramel or vanilla frosting. Then he hears pounding footsteps coming towards him from the other side of the hill. He pulls harder, but it only makes him lose his balance against the terrain and fall down more frequently. The gun slips out of his pocket, but he decides to leave it. He doesn't need it anymore. All he needs is to get out of there alive and bring the body to the police. The noises are coming closer, no longer sound like footsteps to Franklin. They are more like thumping sounds, like somebody is dribbling a dozen basketballs at once. Franklin sees a group of multicolored blobs the size of beach balls bouncing over the hills towards him. They are cherry, orange, lemon, lime, and great balls of blooming, gummy candy. Though they have no limbs, the candies are having a single eye in the center of their bodies and large mouths. Franklin doesn't know what to make of them. He is more surprised than afraid. Just to be on the safe side, Franklin moves quickly away from the gummy blobs, pulling the body with all his strength. But the creatures follow him. They catch up and swarm him, bouncing up and down, circling him like little gummy sharks. The blobs block his path and force him to stop. He smacks at one of them with his cane, but it just comes right back. He smacks another one, but it catches the cane in his mouth and won't let go. Franklin swings the little blob through the air, but it is stuck to the cane like a leech, making slurping noises. An orange blob wraps his mouth around the Candyman's foot and bites it off. The creature doesn't actually have any teeth, but it is still somehow able to suck the foot off the Candyman's leg with ease. The gummy creature is transparent, so Franklin can see the Candyman's foot inside of the blob as it bounces around. The rest of the blobs attack. They bounce in and take bites out of the dead Candyman's flesh and bounce out. They do not attack Franklin, so he assumes they are only after the corpse. Half of the body is absorbed into the bellies of the blobs within minutes. Franklin knows this isn't good. If he doesn't get the body back home, nobody will believe his story. He jerks his cane with all his strength, sending the blob attached to the handle across the meadow. Then he smacks at any creature that comes close to the body. He knocks some of them back, but there are just too many of them. For everyone he knocks away, 3 more come in from behind and takes bites out of the corpse. Franklin pulls the sword of the cane and stabs one of them with it. The blob doesn't die. The hole seals itself up right away and the creature suffers no damage, not even pain. Franklin knows that he cannot give up, so he continues fighting them. He tries cutting the blobs in half or stabbing them in their eyes, but they just reform themselves and continue to attack. Then the blobs stop going after just the corpse and start going after Franklin. When he notices this, Franklin drops the body and backs away. Half of the blobs stay with the body and the other half come after him. Within moments, the gummy blobs gobble up the rest of the corpse, and Franklin finds himself surrounded again by the bouncing creatures. He chaotically thrashes his cane at the swarm and hits the lemon blob so hard that it knocks the cane out of his hand. Then the blobs charge in at him. He leaps over a cherry blob and runs straight for the giant candy cane growing out of the earth. Before they can take a piece out of him, he climbs the candy pole to safety. The blobs stay at the foot of the candy cane for an hour, bouncing hungrily at him, up and down at him. Franklin sweats at first. The moisture causes the candy cane to become sticky, which makes it easier for him to hold. But he sweats more and the candy cane becomes slick. He slides down the candy pole and quickly climbs back up, only to slide down again. It takes only a few minutes before he loses his grip and falls into the swarm of gummy predators. As he hits the ground, a blob jumps into Franklin's chest. It is a fat, purple blob that drools grape-flavored saliva as it opens its wide, smiling mouth around Franklin's head. There is a cracking sound, and the great blob is thrown off of Franklin's chest and it flies 21 feet into the air. Lifting himself up, Franklin sees that someone has come to his rescue. A woman with a long red licorice whip through the air and lands on the chocolate malt bowl nearby. She whips at the gummy blobs, sending them flying in all directions. The blobs scatter. The sound of the cracking whip seems to frighten them. They aren't sensitive to pain, they are sensitive to noise. His rescuer just has to crack the whip a few more times and the rest of the gummy blobs flee into the lollipop forest. Franklin looks at the woman. It is the candy woman. She walks towards him with red and white striped legs, her red vine whip thrown over her shoulder, and a big smile on her face. When she rubs her fingers through her cotton candy hair, Franklin recognizes her. She is the woman from his childhood, the one that murdered his brother and sisters, the one that ruined his life. He goes for his candy cane sword on the ground, but when he comes up, she is already standing in front of him, smiling at him. Are you Cinnamon? The candy woman says to Franklin. Her voice sounds like that of a cartoon elf. I love Cinnamon. She smells him and rubs her hand along his red suit. Or are you Candy Apple? Franklin backs away from her. She smiles at his shyness and becomes paralyzed at the sight of her razor-sharp teeth. She steps closer to him. The smile of artificial strawberry fills his nostrils. It intoxicates him even more than it did when he was a child. His eyes drift into a state of bliss. She smells him again, and her face becomes confused. I don't smell candy apple, or cinnamon, or anything. She says, What's your name? He wants to cut her in half with his cane sword while she is off guard, but finds himself responding to her question. Franklin, he says, stepping closer towards her. What kind of candy is that? She asks. It's not a candy. It's my name, he says. You mean you weren't named after a type of candy? She says. I thought everyone was named after a type of candy. No, Franklin says. Huh, she says, leaning her hand on her glossy hip. Well, my name is Jujube, but you can call me Gigi. The candy woman steps around Franklin and examines him. Hey, your brain is showing, she says to him when she walks behind him. I know, Franklin says. She pokes at his little brain, but stops once Franklin shakes her fingers away. Sorry, she says. As Franklin sways in the drunken delight, Judy licks him on the shoulder. Your candy cone doesn't have any flavor at all, she cries. I'm sorry, he says. Wait a minute, she says. Judy leans in her white taffy face into Franklin's. He looks her into her pink eyes. You're not made of candy, are you? She says. You're one of those grown-up children. Franklin steps away from her as her eyes grow wide. She steps towards him as he steps back, so that the distance between them remains the same. I've never tasted one of you before, she says, licking her red gummy lips at him. In his intoxicated state, Franklin doesn't push her away as she wraps her arms around him and bites into the side of his neck. While his blood leaks down her sugar-white neck, he breathes in so much of her strawberry fragrance that his mind rolls into a soft, comfortable dream. Oh man, that's chapter 10, guys. I don't know. I'm gonna need like maybe 3 people to tell me to read this one last chapter and then I'm out for the night. Huh? I know. Anybody there? Blind said keep reading. I need 2 more. 2 more to tell me that I need to keep reading. And Mommy's vote counts too. She didn't vote.
I didn't vote. I've already read the book.
She's already read it.
Let me see.
Josh said redone. Alright, I need one more. One more vote.
Where are we at?
2. But she can vote if she wants to. Well, I need one more person to tell me to read. And Josh, your other account doesn't count.
Cheater.
You're a cheater. He said, give me a sec.
Get somebody to log in.
Yeah, he's gonna...
Water break.
He said, God damn it! God damn it! Oh.
I guess they really like it.
Alright. Because both y'all want to hear it, I'll read this one chapter.
Last chapter of the night.
Yup, the last chapter of the night. Here we go. When Franklin awakes, he finds himself hanging from a cookie ceiling. There we go. Josh's account. His wrists tied together with black licorice as strong as leather. His mind is still cloudy. His vision smeared, focusing his eyes on something moving on the floor. It is white and fluffy. When his eyes clear, he recognizes it as some kind of animal. It is a puppy made of a marshmallow. This puppy is attacking a large, bright red jawbreaker like it's a tennis ball. Franklin examines the rest of the room. The walls all seem to be made of chocolate chip cookie dough that was baked into bricks. The carpet is furry brown sugar. The windows, made of thin, hard candy, look like multicolored stained glass. In the corner of the room, there is a bright yellow bed with pink flowers. Franklin isn't sure what it is made of, but it looks more rubbery than it does soft. His red cane is on the far end of the room, leaning against the wall. He wishes it was within arm's reach. Through the doorway in front of him, he sees the candy woman sitting at a table made of chocolate-covered wafers. She is holding a human leg in her hand, ripping chunks of meat off with her teeth. As she chews the raw flesh, she looks up and notices Franklin's awake. She stares at him with her cold strawberry soda eyes, blood dribbling down her white chin. With her mouth full, she says, "Hold on. Your meat isn't as tender as a child's." Then she swallows and takes another bite. Franklin looks down and discovers that his right leg is missing. Oh shit. There is a peppermint wood saw on the floor covered in blood. In his sleep, she had sawed off his leg and cauterized it with hot caramel sauce. Examining himself closer, he finds other chunks of meat have been taken out of him. They are all just small bites. Like the one on his neck, all of his wounds are filled with hot caramel sauce. The strawberry fragrance fills the room, numbing his senses to his pain. "What have you done?" Franklin says. She swallows her food and wipes blood from her gummy lips. "I've saved you," she says. Franklin looks at his cane nearby. If only he could reach it. Then he would have a weapon. "My leg!" Franklin cries. She lifts his leg to him as if she thought he was going he was asking to see it. Half of the meat is gone. Franklin can see the exposed muscles and tendons. The limb doesn't look familiar to him anymore. It looks like a piece of roadkill that the woman is eating raw. The only thing that Franklin recognizes is the apple red paint leg covering the bottom of the limb like a apple or like a burrito wrapper.
It's a little chewy, she says, picking at the piece of meat between her teeth. I don't like all the hair.
Then why? Franklin can't complete a full sentence.
Oh, I'm sorry,
She says, acting all very defensive all of a sudden.
it tastes really good. I don't think it's gross or anything. I was just comparing the differences between your meat and children meat. Your meat is still good, just different.
Her taffy cheeks blush into cinnamon redness. Then she awkwardly takes a large bite off his leg and acts as if it's the most delicious thing she has ever tasted, moaning and smiling at the flavor. Franklin opens his mouth to say something, but no words come out. He just watches as she eats his flesh. When she finishes eating, and there are only bones left on the table, she rubs her swollen rainbow swirled belly at him.
That was delicious,
She says to him, but Franklin can tell that she really wishes she had stopped eating his leg halfway through. As she disposes his bones in the waxy garbage can, there is a pounding on the door.
Pixie sticks!
She cries and runs into the bedroom with Franklin. She hushes him, cuts him down with one of her fingernails, and stuffs him in the bed under the covers.
If they find you, they will cut you up and beat you to the lemon hogs,
she says. She cuffs a lime brace around his neck, chaining him to the bedpost. After she tosses the covers over his head, kicks the saw under the bed, turns the light out, and shuts the bedroom door, she yells through her cookie walls at the visitor.
Who comes here?
Juju, says a man's voice. Open now. We must speak. The man's voice is deep and gurgling, like his throat is filled with bubbles. Franklin, lying in the dark, hears the front door opening. I do not want you here, Licorice, she says to her visitor. Oh, wow.
I do not want you here, Licorice,
she says to her visitor. The man lets himself in. Franklin crawls to the edge of the bed. The mattress smells like banana and has the texture of chewed gum. He peeks his eyes out from under the rubbery sheets and realizes the bedroom door has been left open a crack. Float is missing, the Candyman says. We think he's dead. The passage to the upper world is filled with blood. We think a human did it.
That's impossible,
Juju says. The Candyman paces the room and Franklin is able to get a good look at him through the cracked door. The man has hard black candy skin from top to bottom. He wears sweet tart jewelry and Tootsie Roll hat. He seems to have no hair on his head, but he has a goatee made of cocoa butter.
Basically the Canadian.
Not only that, Licorice continues, but we think his murderer is down here somewhere. We found a human weapon by the soda pond.
It is forbidden to bring human items into our world,
Juju says. That's why I believe a human was brought down here, Licorice says. We also trapped some wild gum goblins that had meat in their bellies. If the meat is that of the human, then we'll be able to relax. But once it's examined, I believe we will discover that the meat belongs to Float. It is likely that the human killed Float and the body was then eaten by gum goblins. The human might be down here somewhere.
If the human were down here, where would he have gone? I mean, he would have gone back to the surface by now,
Juju says. Not necessarily, Licorice says. It is possible that someone found him
and took him home with him. Who would do such a thing? Jujui tries to laugh. I only know one person who would, he says. You.
Me?
If anyone would do such a thing, it would be you, Licorice says. You were always a troublemaker. When we were kids, you never liked to follow the rules. You always liked to visit the human world just because you thought it was fun.
I was a kid then,
Jujui says. Franklin sees her nervously looking at him through the door, then looking back at Licorice.
I would never hide a human in my home, she says.
Do you mind if I search it then? Licorice says.
No, you can't.
What's up, Frida? How are you doing?
Aw, Frida, you give me too much credit.
We're actually, we're reading The Cannibals of Candyland. I'm on my last chapter, and then I must depart. Till next time, which is next Friday, actually. Franklin crawls out of the covers and reaches for his cane. Because of his clouded mind, he isn't able to see, or he isn't able to be as careful or quiet as he intended. When he touches the handle of the cane, it bounces off his fingers, slides down the wall, and makes a loud clang as it hits the chocolate chip. What was that? Licorice says.
Nothing,
Jujui says.
just my guest.
You have a guest?
He's from the northern cave and needed a place to stay.
Franklin falls to the floor. He feels along the cookie wall in the dark, trying to find his cane. How long has he been here? He asks.
He just got here today,
she says. It seems funny that he arrives today of all days, he says. I think I'd better meet him. Licorice reaches for the door, but Jujui blocks his path.
You can't,
she says.
He's sick.
Franklin leaves the cane and crawls under the bed to hide.
He has the cheese flu, she says. If you go in, you'll catch it.
Licorice steps away from the door. Cheese flu. So is he gonna die?
I'm not sure,
she says. How long do you plan on keeping him here? He asks.
At least 3 days.
3 days? Licorice yells. He's not taking you as his mate, is he?
No,
she says. He better not take you as his mate, he says.
I'm just helping him get better.
Franklin hears footsteps as Licorice returns to the front door. I will return in 3 days, Licorice says, once he is well. But let me tell you this, Jujube. If you lied to me in any way, you will be sorry.
I'm not lying,
she says. Of course you're not. Woo! Story time! Yep, Trusty, you're right. You came at the end of this chapter, though. They say their goodbyes and the door closes. Neither Jujui nor Franklin makes a sound until the Candyman's footsteps are too far away to hear. The lights turn on from under the bed. Franklin watches Jujui's stiff candy cane legs cross the room. If he had his cane sword, he would be able to stab her in the feet, knock her down, and then slash her throat right there. But his cane is too far away. She kneels down and peeks at him with her dead doll face.
He's gone,
she says. It would have been a waste if they fed all your meat to the lemon hogs. At this range, her strawberry aroma smooths his senses and so softly that it finds himself smiling at her. Alright, so that's chapter 10 finished. Trusty, thank you for the host, I appreciate it.
I want to read some more.
Oh, damn. Alright, well, it is time for us to depart. Thank you all for visiting me with the Cannibals of Candyland by Carlton Millick. I will see you guys next Friday with the same reading on chapter 11. I know, Frito, I'm so sorry. Next time I will tell you guys an actual time and we will read. Hell yeah, I do this! But as I said, it is time for me to go to sleep, and my green screen is freaking out. For any of you guys that are here and lurking in the channel and you haven't already followed, I also do play video games. I do a little bit of sewing, but I haven't set up my sewing desk because I don't have it just yet. Oh my god, my green screen is freaking out. But on Fridays I do a reading. This is the current book.
It's the book of the month.
And yeah, this is the book of the month until we finish it, and then next month will be different. But anyways, I appreciate it. We are going to go host my good friend, if he's still on. Let's see. Thank you, Atrocity, I appreciate it, and thank you, Frito. Yes, indeed, he is still on. Do me a favor, guys, stay in the chat and give this guy some love. I appreciate it. I will see you guys later. Good night.